What's up, guys? It's your boys Wokey back with another video for Chris Watts evidence that we will hopefully build up as ammo to use towards possibly I would say a 100% conviction for NK, but all the evidence that shows that one, Chris wasn't alone, Chris silently snapped, which is the title of this video. But we're gonna be looking at all this evidence, and with the help of this YouTube channel called Andrew Van der Vaart. He's a doctor, PhD, an analyst of deep dive look at Chris Watts and what more had been involved. And we're going to be looking at this because we're going to look at everything: spiritual, the criminal, the paranormal, the lawyer aspect, the legal side, and now we're looking at a doctor's side of it. So with that being said, grab a chair, get comfortable. Make sure you guys also subscribe to the YouTube channel by hitting the white bar icon down the bottom right. Hit the bell icon next to it, so when I do post videos like this one, you guys will get that little ring notification that I've posted that video, and then you guys can watch, comment, like, and share. And again, thank you guys so very much for the continued love and support. We are on our way to 51,000 subscribers, and it's all because of you guys. So keep doing what you guys are doing, and we'll continue to keep growing. Also, go over to this doctor's channel. Links will be down in the description. Yes, I said a doctor. He's going to give us all the pretty much the evidence when it comes to. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to expect with this video. I've been sent it by quite a few of you guys saying I need to watch this, so we're gonna watch it. But links are in the description. Go over to his channel, check his stuff, see what you like, what you don't like, whatever. But give this man some love. And with that being said, let's get into the video.
How could Chris Watts suddenly just murder his entire family? Was this a kind of temporary insanity? Something more permanent? Or neither?
It was
I'm
something.
a resident psychiatrist speculating about the Chris Watts case, not intending to make any formal diagnoses, and any views or opinions expressed in this video are my own and do not represent the views of any institution. So
Again, the same thing for me.
if you're watching this video, you've probably seen the body cam footage of Chris Watts parking his truck in front of his house, getting out, and hustling towards a police officer to shake hands. The police officer is there because Shanan, Watts' friend, hasn't heard from her nor been able to reach her since the night prior. Also hasn't seen any social media posts, all of which is extremely unusual, especially in the context of a missed prenatal appointment that morning for Shanann's pregnancy. Chris looks obviously nervous throughout that footage, but not nervous like a panic-stricken husband who's worried about his missing wife and daughters. More so like he's in a kind of delirium, and at times, like he is panicking, but trying to seem like he's not panicking,
Yep,
which is actually more incongruent with the circumstances. Of course, we'd ultimately find out that he was nervous because he had killed Shanan and his daughters, and
That's the same reason why Nicole was nervous the whole time, because she was involved.
At that time, he knew where they were, which was in an oil field where he'd buried Shanan and put the two girls in oil tankards. Somehow it seemed even more cruel that he had put them in two separate tanks, not allowing them even to be together in death.
Exactly.
All of this transpired following a period of several months,
Makes no sense.
over which time he had essentially checked out of his marriage and been involved in a torrid love affair with a new woman he'd met at work. To me, it seems abundantly clear in retrospect that Chris had decided he was going to perform a hard reset on his life. His relationship with Shanan, his family and home life, which did include dire financial straits, a history of bankruptcy, and ever accruing debt, all of that was going to be erased, wiped from his hard drive, and he was going to start a new life.
Pretty much a good
with
analogy
Nicole
about
Kessinger, his new lover.
What
I want to explore is how he was able to take that idea of a hard reset to such an extreme, cruel, and all too real point. Let's talk first about the biological or pharmacological factors that could have been influencing Chris's mindset around that period and in general.
Which a lot of people do believe that it could have been Thrive. It could have been some type of drink that he was given from NK. He was taking some extra enhancements for sexual things, also gym stuff and so forth. So they're blaming it on everything, but you can't just blame it on drugs all the time. Like, I mean, like, it's in his mindset. He was the one that did it. I mean, that's what they're probably going. That's what the rumors are. But let's see what this gentleman, Andrew, PhD, has for us.
One thing we know is that he was wearing Thrive patches. Thrive is something like the wellness or nutrition wing of Lavelle, which was the multi-level marketing scheme that Shanan was deeply involved in. And when we look at the ingredients in various Thrive patches, many listed seem like fairly benign, run-of-the-mill herbal supplements or vitamins. In terms of the constituents that could have psychotropic properties, particularly among the compounds I suspect Chris was using for his fitness goals, the sort of fitness, workout, weight loss branded patches. There's caffeine and B vitamins, essentially the same things that are in 5 hour energy shots or similar energy drinks. Now, caffeine and B vitamins can certainly cause things like restlessness, irritability, even agitation,
but not murder.
anxiety, even panic. However, these don't seem like the sorts of symptoms that would have played a significant role in what looks more to me like a premeditated murder, where the most unusual part is the disjointedness between who Chris seemed to be prior to this family man, doting father, and husband to essentially deciding he could hit that hard reset and start a new life. That kind of discontinuity in time and identity doesn't seem like it would result from some restlessness or nervousness or even anxiety.
Mhm.
The only thing that I think conceivably could speak to that kind of phenomenon might be huperzine A, because that's both a acetylcholinesterase inhibitor and an NMDA antagonist. So that NMDA antagonist part puts it in the same mechanistic class as things like ketamine or dextromethorphan. Both of these are NMDA antagonists, and that's what underlies the dissociative effects that cause the K-hole or robotripping. DXM is what's in cough
Oh,
syrup. The thing about huperzine A is if it caused that level of dissociation, I would think it would be
high levels.
recreationally used, because there are many people that do enjoy those effects of ketamine, say, or cough syrup. And I've never once heard of anyone abusing huperzine A or using it for
So
fun.
unlikely.
So I kind of doubt that its anti NMDA antagonism is enough to really cause a subjective dissociation or trip. But granted, maybe in mild qualities, it was contributing to a little bit of depersonalization that may have made that transition
I can tell you is a lot of NK.
easier for him, depending on the dose. The thing about the Thrive patches is we know nothing about the doses. These sorts of supplements can just lean on saying, well, it's a proprietary blend, and they don't tell you how many milligrams of any of the components are in there because it's proprietary, they say. And if I put myself in a multi level marketing company's point of view, I think that the products themselves are always secondary to the real way these companies make money, which is the marketing part,
Yep.
selling to other people and
Everything
building your
is
downline.
marketing.
So I have to wonder, would they really use products that were,
Harmful.
one, risky, if they were using high doses of active ingredients that could really cause effects on the body and brain?
Which would cause more people to have this issue. So it wouldn't just be a Chris Watts. It would be multiple different cases. So out of 8,000 cases, 80 of them would have had this significant reaction, as in hallucinogens or seeing people or seeing or hearing voices or whatever have you. Again, I'm not a doctor. I'm just stating from what I researched before I've talked to this or reacting to this, that it can happen to anybody, but it depends on your sanity. It depends on your your appetite and what you ate that day. If it's going to mix with that, if you don't eat anything, it's going to make it even worse. I mean, again, I'm not educated in being a doctor, so this man knows a hell of a lot more than I do. I know like this, and he knows this. So
Brain, when they could otherwise just rely on the placebo effect, and they're more interested in people selling the product.
yeah,
And
so they're
two, why
lying to
spend the
you.
money on high doses of even things like caffeine or B12, which is pretty expensive in energy drinks, it seems, when again, lower doses would save money and they could rely on the placebo effect and the marketing part.
It's just
And they
water.
don't have to tell you what the dose of these things is because it's proprietary. So, all in all, I'm not sure the Thrive patches are a significant factor. But I wonder if there's evidence of some more potent psychotropic drugs that could have been involved here.
Like a drink that he drank.
Let's look to the infamous front porch interview he gave to local TV channels when all that was known was that his wife and children were missing. So his affect is obviously strange. He's making these verbal
Laughing.
pleas, but has this kind of nonchalant, dazed smile. Doesn't seem like he's actually pleading at all in his affect. The words he's saying don't match at all the way he looks. Honestly, he looks outright sedated to me. So that made me wonder,
Sedated.
did he take some kind of downer for the sake of this interview? To get his nerves under control,
Like
take something
gummies?
that would really calm him down. And seems like he took a pretty high dose to look as sedated as he does.
What about his
What we
pupils?
know as well, at least from Chris Watts's account to a pen pal from prison, is that the reason oxycodone was found in Shanan Watts' system was because he had tried to poison her with oxycodone weeks
To
before the
terminate
murder. Because what he really wanted
child,
was for her to miscarry, and that would make it easier for him to leave the
which is
relationship when she
still
was
murder.
pregnant. I don't know that I believe anything Chris Watts says. And I think this
Exactly.
may be him trying to convince this pen pal that, oh, I never really wanted to murder anyone. I wanted a divorce. And so I had tried that, again, through this very malicious means still. But maybe he thinks that's softening what really happened. But I do also wonder, why would he say that he gave her OxyContin if he didn't
He
if he
makes a
didn't
valid
do
point.
that at some point? Or even if not that, the fact that he's talking about getting oxycodone, that's the point I'm really highlighting here. It seems like somebody had Oxycontin that Chris could get it from, or that he got it from an injury.
And the funny thing is there is I can't say hard-earned evidence, but through the grapevine that NK had called a pharmacy, acquired about the reacts of a oxycodone if it was taken while being pregnant. What would it do? Again, we don't know if that's 100% certainty. So it just hearsay kind of thing. So
At some point say, I wondered if that's what he took on that front porch interview. But if he was on the kind of dose of Oxycontin that would make him as sedate as he seems to me, we would expect his pupils to be rather pinpoint.
uh-huh.
And when we look here, while he's bleary eyed, his pupils don't seem particularly constricted to
So he
me.
thinks he's more sedative. Interesting.
Yeah, his stance and affect is bizarre.
He's
But
self-soothing. I know that.
his pupils seem about normal diameter.
Mine are pretty. Well, I got a light in front of my face.
So then the next thing I wonder is, could he have been taking something like Xanax or Valium, so a benzodiazepine? Maybe he took one of these for that interview. That's what causes the sedation, doesn't cause
I wonder if they did a drug screening on him because every single time they take in an inmate, don't they drug screen them? I wonder if they did that.
a major effect on his pupils, but causes this kind of almost drunk like stupor, the kind of goofy smiling. It's essentially like he took goofballs to do this interview with the press. And if he had Xanax or Valium for that interview, is that because he had some prior to that as well? Was there a period of time where he was taking Xanax or something?
What if it's like the MJ stuff? I wonder if, like, let me check. So the interesting case that marijuana became legal in 2014. So could that have been something? Could the Mary Jane drug be the one that's at play here? Because it's been legal since 2014. This happened in 2018.
Something like it regularly. If he were, then this is something that I think could affect his mental state pharmacologically in a significant way. There's a reason doctors tell you not to make major life decisions when you're on a new medication, particularly one of this sort,
Or
because there's
operate heavy
supposed to be a
machinery.
certain level of anxiety that we all have, particularly when we're making big life decisions. If you completely get rid of inhibitions, it doesn't necessarily make you more who you are. It makes certain urges or impulses unregulated. So I do wonder if benzodiazepines like Xanax could have been a contributory factor. If not the intoxication part themselves, the cycle of getting that activity, GABAergic activity that's making you disinhibited, and then rebounding from it, depending on how often you're taking it, can really give you some unregulated moods. And during periods of Xanax withdrawal, you can go into a kind of psychosis or catatonic state.
Hmm.
So that's the kind of psychotropic that I think is more likely to have contributed than Thrive patches, if he in fact had some.
So that can be
And
put
that
to
front
bed.
porch interview makes me think he had something like it. Another possibility is that he was taking something in the steroid hormone class.
That
Given his
was
increased emphasis on fitness in the year plus prior to the murder, I wonder if he might have been taking something like anabolic steroids, HGH, or testosterone. However, he didn't seem to particularly bulk up in terms of mass. He really just became more
slimmed
fit,
down.
it looked like. Anabolic steroids, which could cause the classical roid rage, are less likely. Also, his neck would get big. I mean, even his head and jaw would have gotten bigger if he was using these significantly.
Okay.
You know, he would end up looking like Arnold Schwarzenegger with a big, lantern jaw. Even the when the mandible grows, the teeth will even separate. They'll get gaps between each tooth. The point being that there would be all these physical
I'm learning
changes,
so much
none of
right
which I
now.
see at all in Chris Watts. And it's not just that there's not physical evidence. There's still, in my opinion, not so much evidence of any rages at any point other than maybe the murder. I
Well,
have questions about whether
they did talk about, the neighbors stated that they were yelling and screaming at each other quite a bit. So could that be something to correlate with that?
the murder was committed in a rage, but we'll get to that. None of the texts from Shanan or videos of Shanan are indicative that he was getting angry. Shanan's concerns she had in the text were more like he just wasn't engaging with her anymore, but never anything about him getting angry, even when other people in his life were getting angry, like Shanan and his family who were in a fight. Nicole Kay in her police interview also never talked about him getting angry or really anything that sounded like a diversion from the Chris we see in Shanann's videos, who's essentially just, Mr. Nice Guy, right? Sort of go along to get along, quiet, nice guy. And that brings me from the biological factors to the psychological factors. I don't think we can talk about Chris's psyche in isolation without talking about his relationship with Shanan, partially because Shanan's Facebook videos and streams are the main source of info we have about his personality,
True.
but also because I suspect there are features of his personality which are dependent. That is, his personality revolves around other people in his life, and that who he is highly depends on other people's perceptions of him. And in adulthood, a dependent personality most often has its focus on a romantic partner primarily. And in fact,
So
as
NK.
exhibit A of the dependent qualities, I'm going to show some clips from Chris Watts's speech on communication and relationship deterioration and repair that he apparently gave for a class.
You have two types of deterioration. You have sudden and you have gradual. Gradual would be if you met somebody at work or a new friendship has occurred.
He literally talks about himself.
As it goes on, you see that, okay, maybe this relationship has more potential than the relationship I have with my partner.
More potential for what, I would ask? For emotional validation, perhaps? It sounds like he's familiar with this pattern. He calls it from his research, but I wonder if it's the way he's always lived his life, kind of moving from one person that's giving him the validation to the next person that's giving him the validation. He's also very nervous throughout this.
He
That
sways a
voice
lot.
quivering. It's very different from the front porch interview, right? I think the combination of him clearly being an anxious person and talking about kind of moving from one partner to the other, or always on the lookout for some other partner that might have more potential, kind of sounds like someone who has needs that they want to get met through a partner that's very reassuring and validating.
Which NK did.
And that would gradually push the old relationship out and push the new relationship in. Sometimes when you get married, that the lust and the desire kind of falls by the wayside a little bit. Or when your differences become more important than the similarities, you just pick apart your partner and you don't see anything that you have in common anymore. You just see something he or she does and it just gets on your nerves and you just can't let that go.
You do that? He's talking in the second person. You start just seeing the flaws in your partner. You can't let it go.
And you feel you might do better with someone else that you've met. You think that you can no longer do that. Your partner is someone that you can't be with.
See, here's the thing. It's always the way he's talking. It's as if you always compare your partner with someone else, or you compare your relationship with
I
another
don't do that.
relationship, rather than being able to just judge it as its own thing. Is it good or bad, your relationship? It's only in comparison to other relationships because you have to be in a relationship if you're Chris Watts. He assumes everyone is like
So he
this.
went from his mother,
But it's based on his thinking that you
to
always have to be in a
MK.
relationship because you have these emotional needs that only a partner can.
And when I say with his
accommodate.
mother, I'm talking about mother son, not
Sometimes
anything
people,
weird.
when the relationship starts to dissolve, repair is not an option, and they want to get away and start new.
Hard
Avoid
reset.
words like always and never. If you say this to your partner, it just makes the relationship go, makes it backtrack. You'll never get to the repair stage.
Why is he so nervous?
You
There's
take
like 4 people in the
responsibility for
room.
your feelings.
He's true.
And you need to be descriptive when discussing problems, discussing grievances. You need to own your own feelings and thoughts. Use active listening techniques. Listen to your partner. Make sure they feel wanted. Make sure that they know that you're there and not in space somewhere
Which you
thinking
didn't
about the baseball game that's coming up or the football game that's coming up, which I sometimes do.
Dude likes sports.
Think clearly before saying things you may later forget. Don't just blurt out something. Just think about it. Don't just, if something comes to your mind, then it might be wrong. I do that too. And keep channels of communication open. Always disclose your feelings. Don't keep things. Always disclose your feelings. Don't keep things bottled up because it will later come back.
Which you did.
Always disclose your feelings is definitely advice he was not taking from himself.
The win-lose solution, sometimes when somebody loses, you'll have hostility and you'll have resentment. Sometimes they may not show it, but they will be thinking it.
Resentment is a good prediction, actually.
Positive evaluations, positive feelings. Always disclose your feelings, as I said. Normal behavior. Say you're sorry. I mean, sometimes it takes a lot to admit that you're just to say you're sorry, but it helps. Risk reduction.
We will see him saying sorry as though that's all he needs to do when he's otherwise lying about everything.
Mm-hmm.
And in conclusion, I can say that relationships are hard, but they're worth it in the end. And as the Swedish proverb says, a double joy is a shared joy, and a double sorrow is not a shared sorrow. Thank you.
Relationships are hard, but they're worth it because you need them to survive, is what I think he thinks. So later in 2012, he would marry Shanan Watts. She would later reflect on their getting together as the best thing that ever happened to her. And she would also tell stories about their early relationship, about how when she was at a low point in terms of her health,
He was
struggling with lupus, that Chris wasn't scared off and was there to support her. Specific examples included his accompanying her to a colonoscopy, and another about how Chris let her fall asleep on him for 3 hours when he had to go to the bathroom.
Like through sickness and everything, he's been there. He was the one that let me lay on him and fall asleep for 3.5 hours on his lap while he had to pee.
Now, it may be that this really was Chris being nice in a real way, rather than being a sort of passive, codependent, and people-pleasing nice guy. But taking it in context, I'm leaning towards the latter, sort of fake nice guy personality. One thing is, how did Shanan know that he needed to go to the bathroom that whole time? Evidently, he told her that. So it did seem like he wanted to score some martyr points for having endured those 3 hours where she was sleeping on him and not waking her up. So that points to him doing it for some reason other than the goodness of his heart. And as the psychologist Robert Glover would point out, doing nice things because you want something in return is not actually nice. That's nice guy behavior. So in his relationship with Shanan from there, which I believe he needs to fill the dependent hole that I suspect he has, things do eventually deteriorate, but I'm not exactly sure when. I actually suspect it only started once he found Nicole Kessinger, who he identified for whatever reason as the new person he was going to be dependent on. So either then or maybe before, the appeasement he was doing with Shanan, endless appeasement, masked a growing resentment that was simmering below the surface. The videos where he's constantly being filmed as part of Shanan's marketing job do, I think it's fair to say, show him as being treated as kind of a prop at times, to be honest. And you can tell it's becoming less and less amusing for him to be in that role. There's no more obvious example of that than the surprise pregnancy announcement video, where he seems almost paralyzed.
We did it again. I like
What
that
bugs
shirt.
me is he said that he was talking to Nicole that morning.
We
So
did
he-
it again.
so he was faking it.
I like that shirt. Really?
Really.
That's awesome. So pink means
That's just the test.
I know. It just said the pink is gonna
He
be
was
girls.
scared.
I don't know. Just the test.
That's awesome.
Trying to do the kind of appeasement and mask wearing that he's used to doing.
Guess when you want to, it happens.
But unable to wear the mask effectively at that point. There was also the fight between the families that had occurred over the spring and summer prior to the murders.
Big fight.
And in those text exchanges, you can see him trying to appease Shanann's rage, which is towards Chris's mom, over this situation with an allergen. And I actually imagine at that point, Chris was probably trying to appease Shanan and trying to appease his own family. I wonder if he was not entirely convinced that this allergen issue was justifying Shanann's reaction.
She was upset.
I wonder if he was even doubting the girl's health issues in general. But you can picture him sending Shanan the text we've seen, but also sending his parents text that essentially just apologize on Shanann's behalf and sort of blame her for just being crazy. This is speculation. It just seems like he's got the kind of personality that I've seen other people do, that sort of playing both sides in a fight because he's so conflict avoidant during those times and actually gaslighting his partner. And the fact that he's trying to keep everybody happy in those relationships between his partner and his parents, I think reflects the fact that he was dependent on his parents throughout his early life and continuing in adulthood as well, especially his father, which would explain why when Chris was getting interrogated, once he knew he was as good as caught, his first response, the first request he makes of police before admitting anything is, "Can I talk to my dad?" Why did he need his dad in that moment? Why did he need his dad in the room during his confession? Well, because Chris, I speculate, never developed an identity of his own. And that includes a moral identity or moral compass. He never developed his own because he was always dependent
on his mother.
What other people thought was all that he knew. What other people perceived of him was all that he was. So lacking a moral compass, but wanting to be perceived as moral, and with his dad as the original person whose opinions mattered most to him, whose opinion filled in for Chris's own because he didn't have any of his own. The question was, could he arrive at a story that his dad would accept? That's what he needed to know first. What he needed was his dad to accept the story where, in the story, Chris has behaved morally and is not an evil person. So that ends up being account number 1 of the story, wherein Shanan had killed the children. So Chris, upon seeing that, killed Shanan, a sort of crime of moral passion. So would his dad accept that? Well, enough, I suppose, because it was what Chris was willing to tell the police first. Now let's go back to Nicole Kessinger.
Yes, please.
I'm speculating that she took on the new central role in Chris's life. The person most important to him, indeed the person who he depended on and would depend on for any sense of self. To detach himself from the prior identity where he is Shanann's husband and Belle and Celeste's father, and in such an extreme way where he detached himself from any amount of empathy that he would have had in that prior role.
Man, this guy's good. Like,
I think for Chris was aided for a kind of love-induced intoxication, or love-induced. Because love is maybe intoxicating for everyone, at least in the early love stage, which
Puppy
maybe we
love.
could argue that part is something else, maybe just limerence, maybe a significant component of lust. But the point is, for
honeymoon.
Chris, who was so interpersonally dependent, I imagine he felt the intoxicating feelings very intensely, such that it became all that mattered, a completely overwhelming sensation.
He said
And
he was
that's the kind of
addicted.
intoxication that I think was a bigger variable in his mental state,
Was
his
Endgame.
subjective state, whether or not there was the pharmacologic intoxication of the sort I mentioned earlier. And so the point is, a passive dependent personality, once discarding the previously dependent on partner, can look just like a malignant narcissist. That is, someone who seems to only care about themselves and has zero empathy for anyone else. Really, what's going on in the extreme dependent personality is that they only care about the new object they depend on, in this case, Nicole Kessinger, and the prior ones do not matter. They are no longer real. And that's why, just hours after murdering his family, he was FaceTiming Nicole Kessinger. He was staying in constant contact with her over text, even while the police were searching his house for his wife and children. Now, because Chris only relies on other people's perceptions rather than having his own moral compass, I don't think we can believe anything he's saying at any point.
Agreed.
Each of the times he changes his stories, I think it's because he was still trying to convince someone else or many other people
Or make it
that
look
it wasn't
softer than
quite
it
as
was.
cold as it really was. For example, in his more recent interview with Dr. Phil, Watts's lawyer claimed that Chris confessed to killing Shanan after an argument about divorce, about getting divorced, which is what Chris supposedly wanted. Then during the murder, Bella walked in on the couple, and Chris told her that Shanan was sick, and then he loaded Shanan's dead body and the girls without their car seats into the back seat of his work truck. He later smothered the girls one after the other. It seems like many people believe this account, but I do not think this is likely what happened. He's trying to act like he wanted a divorce, which most people would say, why didn't you just get a divorce? So he's saying, oh, I wanted one, and then the fight got so passionate that I ended up murdering Shanan, and then afterwards I had to murder the girls.
It doesn't
I
make
don't think
sense.
he ever intended to get a divorce. I think he had just skipped over that possibility and jumped to the idea of a hard reset. Just erase the old life. So what I think happened is that he smothered or suffocated the girls in their sleep, maybe even prior to Shanan getting home that night. When she got home, he strangled her with his bare hands, as he knew he was going to do before she got home. I think this was his plan all along. I know people say that they can see one of the girls walking into Chris's truck during that security cam footage from the neighbor. I don't see anything that convinces me of that. I think the brain is very primed to see things that look like people or faces because we're so social. I don't see anything that looks like it's definitely a child. And I think the situation is that what Chris actually did was commit these murders in the most cold and calculating way possible. And that most calculating way possible would not be to have the girls riding in the truck without their car seats, alive while their mom is dead on the floorboard. It would be cruel to do that for sure, but it wouldn't be calculating. And I think in Chris's mind, that's what it can't be. It cannot be calculating. So he's trying to say there was this passionate fight and he waited until the last possible minute to kill the girls. And he had to do it because their life would have only been suffering once their mom was dead. And so it was still something where he was trying to do the right thing.
I don't think the girls
something
were
that's ridiculous at that point. There's no logic in it. But the important thing to him is that he needs people to not see it as quite as cold as it really is. But I do see it as that cold. But the question that comes out of the next round of his confession, is it possible that he attempted to do this in a very calculating way, but did miscalculate in the sense that he did not successfully kill the girls in a premeditated way.
Because they woke
So the
back
letters
up.
he wrote from prison, which were compiled into a book by Sherlin Cadle, Letters from Christopher, is his newest story, where he says that he did actually attempt to suffocate both girls in their sleep. Here you go. He'd been thinking about killing his family for weeks so that he could be with his girlfriend Nicole Kessinger forever. He did try to kill them first at home, but they woke back up. So he wrote this letter saying, August 13th, the morning of, I went to the girls' room first before Shanan and I had our argument. I went to Bella's room, then Cece's room, and used a pillow from their bed. That's why the cause of death was smothering.
That's why they took the pillowcases and the bedding from the blankets in their room, but they put them in plastic bags instead of paper bags. Because plastic is going to somewhat alter, or can alter, because of humidity and moisture in the air, but paper bags won't do that, is what we've seen before on different crime shows. Not CSI, but actual crime, First 48 and all the other ones that we've seen. So that makes sense.
After I left Cece's room, I climbed back in bed with Shanan and our argument ensued.
But why would he climb in bed, though? That's
so then he says after Shanan had passed, Bella and Cece woke back up. I'm not sure how they woke back up, but they did. Bella's eyes were bruised and both girls looked like they'd been through trauma. That made the act that much worse, knowing I went into the rooms first and knowing I still took their lives at the location. That on the night of August 12th, he knew that would be the last night. He tucked his daughters into bed. I knew what was going to happen the day before, and I did nothing to stop it. I was numb to the entire world. So I knew what was going to happen, and I did nothing to stop it. It's in the passive voice there, as if this were something that he was possessed. He was taken over by something, and this was going to happen, and he couldn't stop it. He did nothing to stop it. So I think this account is the closest to what really happened. I just still don't believe there was an argument between he and Shanan. It doesn't make sense. Why would he have? So it was a premeditated murder of the girls, but then he killed Shanan after an argument. So I think what's going on with this story is it's a mix of trying to make it seem like he wasn't lying as much in his earlier stories and letting some more of the truth about how cold and calculating it was out.
Because she didn't fight.
His plan was to kill all three of them. He did or tried.
Because, I mean, there was a couple marks on her, but you cannot tell me that after an argument, he's doing the act and she's just like, I guarantee that woman would have fought. That woman was a fighter and an independent woman. She's gonna fight to be alive with her babies. So I think he surprised her. I don't think they had intimacy. He was getting ready to initiate a possible look of intimacy, but instead went to the act, surprised her where she couldn't fight off significantly, but caused some redding around his neck. So that, I mean, I definitely do agree on this circumstances that he has stated, but again, those shadows too, they look a little bit more lighter, more smaller than the original. That's why this case is so freaking like upsetting and lost, because there's so many differences that we could find out, but Chris and Nicole won't say nothing. Like they're done. They're trapped. They're signed, sealed, delivered, and they're done.
To kill the girls before Shanan got home. When she got home, he was going to kill her all along. What I don't know is why he would lie about the girls waking back up. But as unbelievable as it seems, I think it's possible that he is just saying they woke back up because he's trying to cover for his prior story where he killed them at the location. But maybe it's possible that he tried to kill them, they woke back up, he did load them into the car alive, and then killed them at the location. Again, I think his ability to tell the truth is seriously impaired by his people-pleasing concern about other people's perception. So it's saying he drove to the oil site where he buried Shanan, smothered Cece there, and then went for Bella.
Which would make sense that he was able to do this faster at
his appeasement and people-pleasing comes out even in his sort of treatment of this book that came out by Sherlin Cadle. Cadle said Christopher was happy until he saw it all in print, and with the problems from his family, it's hard for him. He always does what he is told. He was conditioned to do that. His mother didn't want the book because it was admitting what she fought against from the beginning. saying he couldn't have killed his girls. So
Well, I
he was
think that
upset with the
Nicole
final
did it.
product, even being aware of its content all along. Really, what this is he was upset with the final product when he realized his mom was upset by it. But so I honestly don't know if he killed the girls twice, as he's saying now, or if part of that is him having to somehow align the prior confession he told, where he kills the girls at the oil site, with this current confession where he's willing to admit that it was a premeditated murder so he could be with Nicole. Whatever it is that happened, I do
should have
see
never
it
happened.
as the coldest thing possible. That is, it is completely devoid of empathy. And it is, I think, the product of an inability to see people as anything other than objects that he either does or does not depend on. The ones
So
he
he never
does
cared about him to
emotionally
begin
depend
with?
on, all he knows how to do is please or appease them. And so what they think of him is all that matters. The ones he doesn't depend on might as well not exist.
Mm-hmm.
The last thing I'll comment on is his new prison personality, where he is a devout religious Christian. The obvious interpretation of this is that this is the latest attempt to please people. This is people pleasing on the sort of wide scale, for his audience, on the broad stage of people following up on Chris Watts in prison. But here, I'm actually going to abandon my own sense of reason or logic and say, I don't want to rule out the possibility that some of that personality is real. And it's not because I think it's likely to be real, but it's because I don't want to live in a world where redemption is not possible. And it's not to say he should ever be out of prison. I don't think he should. But it is to say that while it's not in our nature to be generous in our interpretations of murderers' behaviors, perhaps it is, well, in our better nature to spare a modicum of openness to the possibility that someone can learn to feel remorse. I guess I just want to believe that that's possible. Well,
I don't think he could, though.
maybe we can agree on at least that on the spectrum of evil type behavior, if you're going to compare Chris Watts' recent behavior, which includes, saying and acting like he has remorse, with someone like the Ohio school killer, TJ Lane, who showed up in court wearing a t-shirt that he'd written in permanent marker "killer" across the front, and made a statement where he mocked the victims' families in the most vile way imaginable. At least there are times when being a people pleaser and trying to please everyone, while it's not going to be successful in the long run, perhaps there are times when pretending to do something can turn into actually doing the thing. It's at least better than leaning into having zero remorse.
I don't think Chris has.
So I suppose
remorse,
that's the
to be
generous
honest.
note that I'll try to leave Chris Watts on.
I definitely enjoyed this doctor's partake on this and analyst on this case. I definitely enjoyed his stuff. I definitely would state that go over to his YouTube channel, give him some love. Definitely has been having a look at a vast majority of different cases and murder cases. He did state that neuroscience and so forth, and again, it's educational purposes, not a diagnosis, only to evaluate, and it's not for treatment or it's not for evaluations or treatment. He's just putting his 2 cents in it, like we do as well. So, please take with what you will to see what this doctor had stated. I definitely do agree with him on a lot of the cases. I'm still up in the air about the whole partake on him murdering him at the house at that time and then doing it again at Survey 319. It definitely would make more sense to have them murdered at the house, go out there and then dispose of them how he did. It would actually be faster in the beginning rather than out at Survey 319. But again, we saw the little feet. I mean, what do you guys think? Please comment down below. Please keep it positive. Please keep it respectful. And we'll see you guys in the next one. So please take care. Keep it safe. And as always, keep nerding on. And we'll see you guys next time.